A third bailout for Greece could be a reality. Today we will discuss this question. Has Greece's future been tossed down the toilet? You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. I want to get into this today, discuss the third bailout for Greece, which is not yet official, but I'd like to discuss what information we do know at this point. This is out of the AP. Greece's negotiators head to Brussels on Saturday armed with their reform proposal and parliamentary backing to seek a third bailout, but with the shadow of severe dissent from governing lawmakers hanging over them. So right here, they basically are going ahead with a proposal that says we will take that third bailout and we're going to have to make some changes as a result. So here we go. They had these proposals which contain tax hikes and deep spending cuts, including on pensions, that the 6-month-old left-wing government had so far resisted. They are pushed against the wall at this point. If they don't give in to this third bailout, they would ultimately have to default. I don't think the world is ready to bail out Greece, except for these nations which have come forward, the institutions like the IMF, the EU, the ECB, everyone piling together in this regard. Without a deal, Greece had already desperately low on cash, its banks shut for the past 2 weeks, and its population restricted on cash withdrawals, risks cashing out of Europe's joint currency, the euro. It would be the first country to do so, and then it goes on. And basically, you can take this with a grain of salt. I want to move on quickly to this next article out of the Financial Times. MPs in Athens had heartened investors with the new economic reform proposal that conceded to the country's bailout creditors on several fronts. So initially, they had said, we will not give in no matter what. They had this referendum that took place just recently, and what they said was, let's give the people the choice. Do you want to take the bailout? Do you want to take haircuts? How do you want this to happen? Vote yes or no. They voted no to giving in to the demands. And here we are. Perhaps at this time of this video's creation, they haven't given in, but it seems like they're going forward in that way. The move, part of a bid for a new 53.5 billion euro 3-year bailout Athens needs to avoid bankruptcy, bears a striking resemblance to a compromise offer extended by creditors last month that was rejected by Greece's voters in last weekend's national referendum. To me, it seems very odd that they're going ahead like this. Nevertheless, they have to get money somewhere. They don't have a choice because they've officially run out. So what does a person do when they are pushed against the wall? Well, they can claim bankruptcy or they can give in to their creditors. And that's what has happened here. At least it looks like it's heading that direction. More good information actually in this article here, but I need to move on. In a very interesting point to note here, EU and IMF officials have given Eurozone governments a positive assessment of Greece's request for a new bailout. This is according to a source, making it likely that they will agree on Saturday to open talks of lending Athens tens of billions of additional euros. So this isn't, again, official, but we're looking at people from the EU and the IMF saying, okay, this is good to go. As long as you're willing to cut, we're willing to give you money. The positive evaluation, along with a conclusion that Athens currently needs some 74 billion euros to meet its obligations, will form a key part of discussions among Eurozone finance ministers when they meet in Brussels. Remember what I discussed in previous videos, how they said, do not come unprepared. Before we even go to these meetings, you better give us something on paper. That's what's happened right here. Whether you like it or not, the only way they're going to get a form of bailout is if they go ahead and do something like this. So they seem to be heading in this direction. This is from my book talking about the IMF. Every time I bring up the IMF, you always have to think about what the IMF's true agenda is. Remember that the IMF, despite the fact that they defaulted to them, Greece that is, they are still indebted to them. Indonesia in the past was essentially forced to take out a loan from the IMF. They're pressured into a scenario that they will default on their loans, and they have these catastrophic results if they don't pay it back. But of course, once they're indebted, the IMF basically dictates the policies of that nation. That's exactly what's happened within Greece. Malaysia is a different scenario because they rejected the IMF, said, no, we don't want your money. And of course, years later, they were back to, growing again. There is the hardship that takes place, but as long as you are willing to admit it, the country can basically have to lose out on certain benefits that it currently has. The GDP might shrink, the debt might increase, but ultimately it can heal faster when they take into the large creditors like the IMF and the others who end up dictating the policies. Things only get worse from there. Let's move on to this out of the Independent. Goldman Sachs faces the prospect of potential legal action from Greece over the complex financial deals in 2001 that many blame for a subsequent debt crisis. This is huge news right here, whether it goes through or not. I think at least the fact that it is shedding light on this topic is very important. We've all known this. We've known that they fudged the numbers in order to get Greece in the first place. They should not have been allowed, but they want this to expand. They want it to be like this simply because debt is the ultimate source of power in this financial realm, and they do so successfully by bringing in more and more people through this EU system. It is nothing more than a test for global governance. We also know what happened with the credit default swaps and how that led into such a deep crisis, particularly in Greece. The Independent has learned from a former Goldman banker who has advised the indebted governments on recovering losses made from complex transactions with the banks, had written to the Greek government to advise that it has a chance of clawing back some of the hundreds of millions of dollars it paid Goldman to secure its position in the single currency. Very, very interesting information here. We'll see where this all goes. Now, out of Time magazine, they have some very interesting points. I want to bring these up, and let's look at this right away. In perhaps the strangest twist, the desire to spend whatever they have in their accounts has even spurred Greece to pay off all of their taxes. And the officials actually watch in disbelief as the money poured in the last week, unable to first explain the influx of $700 million. And essentially, they do not know if they'll be able to pay tomorrow, so they pay today, right now. They are pushed into this debt crisis. Now, a lot of people that I consult, a lot of people that even just through emails or comments, and, it isn't just those one-on-one consultations. This is, hundreds of people that I've had to reply to in one way, shape, or form. They always ask, do I pay off my debt, or do I assume that this system is going to collapse and my debt's going to be erased, or we're going to have an inflation or a hyperinflation and it'll basically inflate its way and disappear? I always say pay off your debts now. This to me is extremely important. Now people are in the situation, perhaps in the US or the UK, Canada, Australia, wherever, and they are in a situation, perhaps they're in $20,000 of debt or what have you, and they feel, I don't need to pay back my debts. But look at the situation in Greece. Even though they're actually restricted to how much money they can pull out, they are in a deep part of this crisis, entering into the third bailout, and yet they're paying off their taxes. This, you would think, would be a time for them to not pay off, but here they are, they're doing so. I just wanted to leave you with that tidbit here. Two other points that I wanted to make very quickly. According to the CBO, debt headed to 103% of GDP. We're talking about the US now. Levels seen only in World War II, no way to predict whether or when the fiscal crisis might occur here. They're at 100% of GDP. That doesn't take into account all of the garbage that we know is going on here. Every nation is in the same problem. The US is no different. You can't get out of 100% of GDP. It's impossible. When you have Greece 180% of the GDP. Again, impossible. Mathematically impossible. Billionaires beef up in Bush. This is very, very interesting to note that the billionaires around the world are buying up farmland like crazy. We even noted that perhaps it's in a bubble. But what are they buying that for? Do they care about what it's going to be worth tomorrow? Well, some of them do, certainly. But they are looking for places to park their money that is outside of the financial system. They've reached a peak on their stock investments, and they are basically getting into other things, farmland being one of them. It's stable. Yes, it might go down, but it might go up, but at least they own something real. It's tangible. You can do so in the same way on a smaller scale. Own what is tangible to keep and maintain your wealth. And last but not least, I just wanted to know one thing very, very quick from my book where I talked about Greece. A second round of bailouts for Greece is needed. Remember that this was written before the second bailout for Greece. Despite the billions given the first round, it just wasn't enough. And I said it will continue. I'm basically saying that, yes, there's going to be a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth. All of these bailouts will have to continue. I predicted QE3 in this book. It doesn't take a crystal ball or a soothsayer or a genius to be able to tell that every country who gets a bailout often will need another bailout. It's like an alcoholic. What do they need to get out of their detoxification? They need more alcohol, and that's what's going to solve their problem. But of course, that is only a temporary fix. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. Last but not least, if you found the video informative, I know you'll find my book even more informative, so you can actually go to Amazon and flip through the book for yourself. They have the look inside feature, which allows you to do that. And that's all. Take care.